Victoria Line dig, carried out beneath London in the 1960s, was one of the most ambitious underground construction projects of the modern age, and hidden within it lies an extraordinary Cold War secret, a network of bunkers designed to protect against nuclear attack. Located beneath the new tunnels of the Victoria Line, these fortified chambers were built discreetly alongside passenger infrastructure, blending transport progress with military preparedness. Their importance lay in the dual purpose they served, ensuring Londoners could travel swiftly across the city while simultaneously giving the government secret fallback spaces in the event of catastrophe. The Cold War had transformed the way engineers thought about urban projects, and the Victoria Line became more than just a railway. It was also a shield, a subtle layer of defense hidden beneath the everyday commute. London, still scarred from the bombings of the Second World War, faced a new and even more terrifying threat in the nuclear age, and officials quietly planned for survival in the event of a Soviet strike. As tunneling machines chewed through London clay and concrete linings were bolted into place, sections of the line were reinforced, widened, and outfitted with secure chambers accessible only to those with clearance. These spaces were not meant for the public. They were designed for officials, civil defense planners, and communications equipment that could keep the city functioning in its darkest hour. To ordinary passengers, the Victoria Line was a marvel of modern transport when it opened in 1968, a sleek and efficient artery connecting north and south. But beneath the polished platforms and new escalators, the bunkers lay silent, their existence unknown to most of the very commuters whose daily journeys passed just meters away. This fusion of civilian progress and military secrecy exemplified the Cold War mindset: survival embedded in the mundane, secrecy hidden in plain sight, and resilience built into the very bones of the city. The Victoria Line dig was not just about trains, it was about safeguarding a capital caught between two eras, the memory of the Blitz behind it and the shadow of nuclear war. Ahead, the construction of the Victoria Line's hidden bunkers was a remarkable feat of engineering carried out in absolute secrecy. On the surface, it appeared as though work was proceeding normally on the long-awaited tube extension that would finally provide London with a direct, north-south underground link. Beneath this public project, however, certain sections of the line were being quietly expanded and reinforced, their walls thickened with extra layers of concrete and steel to withstand shockwaves from potential nuclear blasts. These underground chambers were deliberately integrated into the wider construction so that they would be indistinguishable from ordinary service tunnels or ventilation shafts to anyone without clearance. Engineers working on the dig were often split into teams, with only a select few aware of the military aspect of the project, while the majority believed they were constructing conventional service areas. The secrecy was vital. Britain in the 1960s was under the constant threat of Cold War escalation, and to reveal that bunkers were being hidden beneath the new line could have caused panic or drawn unwanted attention from adversaries. Inside these chambers, reinforced blast doors were installed, along with emergency power supplies and communications lines. Plans indicated that, in the event of nuclear war, the shelters could serve as protected command points for civil defense, allowing officials to coordinate emergency responses even if the city above was devastated. The scale of the bunkers varied. Some were little more than secure rooms tucked away behind thick walls, while others were larger complexes capable of accommodating dozens of personnel. Access was carefully controlled, often concealed within maintenance shafts or nondescript utility doors that blended seamlessly into the architecture of the new stations. To the public, nothing seemed unusual. The Victoria Line appeared to be simply another step in modernizing the underground. Yet behind the tiled walls and gleaming escalators, the Cold War had left its fingerprint in concrete, wiring, and hidden spaces. The bunkers stood as silent sentinels, their existence a constant reminder that even as Britain celebrated progress and efficiency in transport, it was also bracing itself for a future overshadowed by the specter of nuclear annihilation. The Cold War bunkers built into the Victoria Line were not passive spaces. They were designed with specific roles in mind should the unthinkable happen. Their primary function was to serve as secure command and control centers, hidden in plain sight beneath one of the busiest cities in the world. Equipped with reinforced communications lines, these chambers could link to government networks, allowing officials to continue issuing orders even if surface infrastructure was crippled by a nuclear strike. Emergency generators were installed to provide power independent of the national grid, ensuring that the rooms could remain operational for days or even weeks. Ventilation systems, discreetly integrated into existing shaft designs, were fitted with filters capable of reducing fallout particles, while water tanks and basic sanitation facilities were hidden inside rooms. The design acknowledged grim realities. In the event of nuclear attack, London's surface might be rendered uninhabitable, but beneath the ground, a skeleton network of bunkers would allow continuity of government and civil defense. Personnel stationed there would include civil servants, communications officers, and planners tasked with coordinating evacuation zones, rationing systems, and emergency medical responses. Some accounts suggest that the bunkers were also designed to act as relay points, linking to larger Cold War installations outside London, creating a web of survivable nodes that could keep the state functioning even in the worst scenarios. For the ordinary commuter using the Victoria Line, there was no hint of this hidden machinery of survival. The trains ran smoothly, the stations gleamed with modern design, and the public celebrated the speed and convenience of London's first fully automatic tube line. Yet behind the everyday was a world of contingency, where the tunnels carried not just commuters but the weight of Cold War strategy. These secret spaces embodied the paradox of the era, a society determined to modernize and progress, but never free from the looming shadow of nuclear destruction. The Victoria Line bunkers were built not because officials believed they could fully withstand a global war, but because they knew the continuity of authority even in fragments might mean the difference between chaos and survival. Secrecy was central to the entire project of embedding Cold War bunkers within the Victoria Line dig. At a time when public trust in government was delicate and the fear of nuclear annihilation ever present, officials believed that revealing the existence of fortified shelters would cause more panic than reassurance. The public was already aware of civil defense campaigns, such as Protect and Survive, but the thought of hidden command posts beneath the city would have stirred anger among ordinary people who had no access to them. To preserve discretion, the bunkers were integrated so seamlessly into the line's infrastructure that even many construction workers never realized what they were building. Teams were compartmentalized, with only a small number of engineers briefed on the true purpose of certain reinforced areas. Official documentation referred to the bunkers as service tunnels or communications rooms, masking their military significance under the language of utility. Maintenance staff who later encountered the secure doors or unusual layouts were often told that they were simply part of ventilation or power systems. Even after the Victoria Line opened in 1968, public tours and promotional materials made no mention of anything unusual, focusing instead on the innovations of the line's automatic trains and modern architecture. Politicians praised the Victoria Line as a symbol of Britain's technological renewal, while deep beneath their feet, reinforced chambers waited in silence. The secrecy was not only about avoiding panic, it was also about protecting the system from espionage. During the height of Cold War tensions, London was seen as a prime target for Soviet intelligence, and any hint of a protected government facility within the underground would have drawn unwanted attention. Thus, the bunkers became part of a hidden London, a city within a city, known only to select officials and planners. Their invisibility is perhaps the greatest proof of their success. For decades, millions of passengers traveled above them daily, never suspecting that beneath the tiled walls and rumbling trains lay chambers built, not for commuters, but for survival in a nuclear age. If nuclear war had ever broken out during the Cold War, the bunkers hidden within the Victoria Line dig were designed to spring into action almost immediately. Civil defense protocols envisioned a scenario in which London could be struck with little or no warning, giving officials only minutes to reach secure locations. In such an emergency, selected government personnel, communications officers and military liaisons would be rushed underground through discreet entrances disguised as maintenance hatches or service doors in Victoria Line stations. Once sealed inside, heavy blast doors would close off the chambers, isolating them from the devastation above. Emergency generators would power communications equipment, radios and teleprinters, allowing orders to be transmitted to regional authorities and other bunkers scattered across Britain. Ventilation systems with filtration units would keep air breathable, while underground water tanks and ration stores would sustain occupants for days or weeks if necessary. These spaces were not meant to be comfortable. They were functional, cramped, and utilitarian, designed to maximize survival and continuity of governance in the most extreme circumstances. From here, officials could coordinate the evacuation of survivors, redirect emergency services, and oversee the rationing of food and fuel. Some plans even suggested that the Victoria Line bunkers could serve as communication relay hubs, linking the capital's surviving authorities to larger, more remote command centers like the central government war headquarters at Corsham in Wiltshire. The irony, of course, was that while thousands of ordinary Londoners would have had little chance of protection in the event of a direct strike, a select group of officials would have been hidden away beneath the very trains people used for their daily commute. To the public, the underground was a convenience. To the state, it was also a shield. The bunkers embodied the Cold War paradox, preparing for a catastrophe that everyone hoped would never come, investing resources in survival while simultaneously promoting an image of progress and normalcy on the surface. In practice, they were a grim insurance policy, a last line of defense against chaos should the world above collapse into nuclear fire. Life inside the Victoria Line's Cold War bunkers, had they ever been activated, would have been a stark contrast to the bustling world of the underground just meters away. These were not designed to be comfortable sanctuaries, but functional survival spaces, stripped down to the bare essentials. The reinforced chambers contained cramped workrooms lined with communications equipment, banks of teleprinters and radios humming with static, all powered by emergency generators. Officials and staff would have worked long shifts in these windowless rooms, illuminated only by fluorescent tubes that cast a cold, unrelenting glow. Sleeping quarters were little more than rows of narrow bunks stacked against the walls, each assigned to rotating shifts of personnel who would hotbed, sleeping in turns while others worked. Meals would have consisted of ration packs and tinned food stored in sealed crates, with water drawn from underground tanks or filtered through basic purification systems. Sanitation was primitive, with chemical toilets tucked into small side rooms, separated only by thin partitions that offered little privacy. The air would have been heavy, recycled through filtration units designed to screen out radioactive fallout, but never truly fresh. The psychological strain would have been immense. Days or weeks underground, cut off from natural light, with the ever-present knowledge that the world above may have been reduced to ruin. Staff would have been expected to remain disciplined, maintaining a steady flow of communications and directives, while living in conditions that blurred the line between survival and imprisonment. Tensions would likely have run high, but strict protocols and chains of command were meant to prevent disorder. In many ways, the environment would have resembled that of a submarine, contained, claustrophobic, and relentlessly purposeful. Those stationed there would have borne the burden of continuity, carrying on the functions of governance and civil defense even as ordinary citizens outside had little chance of survival. It was a chilling vision of resilience, not comfort or safety for all, but endurance for a chosen few, sustained by concrete, steel, and secrecy. The Victoria Line bunkers, silent beneath the trains, represented this grim practicality, life preserved not for its quality, but for its necessity. The hidden bunkers of the Victoria Line were not unique in concept, but they were distinctive in their integration with a public infrastructure project. Across London and Britain, the Cold War era produced a scattered network of protective sites, each designed with different roles in mind. Some were sprawling complexes like the central government war headquarters at Corsham in Wiltshire, capable of housing thousands of staff in a self-sufficient underground city. Others were smaller regional command posts or local authority shelters, often repurposed from Second World War bunkers. In comparison, the Victoria Line installations were modest, built into the very fabric of the tube to act as discrete nodes of resilience within the capital. Unlike the grander facilities, they were not designed for long-term habitation or mass civilian protection, but rather for ensuring that communication and authority could survive in the early hours or days of a crisis. Their concealment beneath a busy commuter line gave them a level of camouflage. Few other bunkers could match Hiiden, not in remote countryside, but directly under the city's daily life. This integration highlighted a particular Cold War strategy. Rather than concentrate all protective capacity in one massive site, planners preferred to scatter smaller bunkers across the capital, reducing the risk that a single strike could decapitate governance. The Victoria Line bunkers therefore fit into a broader web of resilience, linked to civil defense plans that stretched from London to regional outposts across the country. Yet their secretive nature set them apart from more public projects. Like municipal shelters occasionally advertised to reassure local populations, ordinary Londoners had no idea that as they rode sleek new trains through stations like Oxford Circus or Euston, fortified rooms stood nearby, ready to host officials in a moment of catastrophe. In this sense, the Victoria Line dig reflected both innovation and inequality. Innovation in weaving survival planning into modern infrastructure. Inequality in that protection was reserved for a select few. compared to the vast, well-documented bunkers elsewhere. These were smaller, quieter, and perhaps even more haunting because they were hidden beneath the very feet of millions who would never be allowed inside. The decision to embed bunkers within the Victoria Line project reflected the wider Cold War mindset that gripped Britain during the 1950s and 1960s. The horrors of the Blitz were still within living memory, but now the threat was far greater, not incendiary bombs, but nuclear weapons capable of flattening whole districts in an instant. Politicians, planners, and engineers knew that no defense could guarantee survival for all, but the government was determined to preserve some form of continuity. This meant building hidden layers of resilience into the very infrastructure of the city. Urban planning during this era often carried a dual purpose on the surface. New transport links and modern utilities symbolized progress, while beneath, secret fortifications were woven into the fabric of construction. The Victoria Line represented this paradox perfectly, marketed to the public as a sleek, automatic railway that would modernize London, while privately serving as a skeleton for survival in a nuclear age. Fear shaped every decision, from the thickness of concrete linings to the placement of communications cables, ensuring that the network could double as both a transport artery and an emergency lifeline. The secrecy was not merely about hiding resources from the Soviets, it was also about maintaining morale. To admit that bunkers were being built beneath the tube would have reminded ordinary citizens that their government expected devastation on a scale far beyond their ability to survive. Instead, the message projected was one of optimism, with new stations and automatic trains symbolizing a forward-looking Britain. Yet beneath the optimism ran a current of dread, and the bunkers built into the dig were physical manifestations of that fear. They demonstrated how the Cold War shaped not just military bases and missile silos, but also the everyday city, its transport systems, utilities, and hidden spaces. For London, this meant that even as commuters enjoyed the convenience of a modern underground line, their journeys were shadowed by the quiet presence of survival chambers built for a world no one hoped to see. The Victoria Line dig was therefore both a triumph of progress and a reminder that beneath every advance lay the haunting specter of nuclear annihilation. With the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s, the bunkers built into the Victoria Line slipped quietly into redundancy. The immediate threat of nuclear annihilation receded as relations thawed between East and West, and Britain's civil defense strategies were scaled back dramatically. Many of the contingency plans that had once justified hidden chambers beneath London were shelved, their urgency replaced by a new focus on modernization, economics, and urban development. The bunkers, sealed behind thick doors and buried within the structure of the underground, became relics of a vanished fear. Some were stripped of their specialized equipment, their communications gear removed and power systems disconnected, leaving only empty concrete shells. Others were repurposed in small ways, used for storage, training exercises, or as service access points for engineers maintaining the line. Yet for the most part, they were simply forgotten, overshadowed by the bustling life of the Victoria Line above, where millions of passengers rode each week without the faintest idea of what lay beyond certain walls. For heritage enthusiasts and urban explorers, these abandoned spaces took on an aura of mystery. Rumors circulated about secret doors in stations or maintenance passages leading to sealed rooms where Cold War history lingered in silence. Unlike the grander bunkers at Corsham or the Cabinet War Rooms, the Victoria Line chambers were never intended for public display, and so their afterlife has remained hidden, uncelebrated, and inaccessible. Still, their legacy endures as a reminder of how deeply the Cold War shaped even the most mundane aspects of urban life. Every reinforced wall, every sealed hatch tells the story of an age when nuclear war was considered not just possible but probable, and when survival was designed into the infrastructure of a city. Today, in an era of renewed geopolitical uncertainty, their existence feels both distant and eerily relevant, symbols of a time when Londoners lived with the shadow of annihilation beneath their daily commutes. Though the world has moved on, the bunkers remain, silent witnesses to a chapter of history where fear carved itself into the very bones of the underground. Over the years, the hidden bunkers of the Victoria Line have become fertile ground for folklore, urban myths, and speculation. London is a city built on layers, and whenever a space is sealed or concealed, stories inevitably grow to fill the silence. Some commuters whisper of ghost stations and unused platforms where secure doors lead to secret chambers. Others tell of maintenance workers who stumbled upon reinforced blast doors deep within the tunnels. only to be swiftly redirected and sworn to secrecy. Myths suggest that the Victoria Line's bunkers were connected by hidden passageways to Whitehall or even Buckingham Palace, part of an invisible emergency escape network for the government. While most of these claims are exaggerated or unfounded, they reveal the aura of mystery that clings to Cold War infrastructure. Urban explorers have fueled these legends, circulating grainy photographs of locked steel doors or sealed stairwells encountered on the line, often accompanied by dramatic claims of discovering the nuclear bunkers of the tube. In popular culture, the idea of hidden chambers beneath London has inspired thrillers, conspiracy theories, and speculative fiction, blurring the lines between fact and imagination. What makes the Victoria Line particularly compelling is the mixture of truth and rumor. The bunkers really were built, and yet so little is publicly known about them that speculation easily flourishes. To ordinary passengers, the daily rush through Oxford Circus or King's Cross feels routine, but the possibility that just beyond the tiled walls lies a relic of Cold War paranoia gives the commute an eerie undertone. Historians caution against taking the legends at face value, but they also acknowledge that the myths keep public interest alive in a story that might otherwise fade into obscurity. Whether whispered as ghost stories, woven into conspiracy theories, or simply imagined in the quiet moments of a tube journey, the Victoria Line's hidden bunkers have become part of London's cultural imagination. They symbolize the unseen, the secret city beneath the surface, and the way fear can leave traces not only in concrete and steel but also in the stories we tell ourselves about survival. The bunkers hidden within the Victoria Line dig are more than relics of engineering. They are symbols of an era when fear of nuclear war shaped every level of planning in Britain. Together with sites like the Cabinet War Rooms, the massive Corsham complex, and regional command centres scattered across the country, they form part of London's Cold War heritage, a shadow network of survival built into the city itself. Yet while places like Corsham were vast and well documented, the Victoria Line bunkers were modest, almost invisible by design. Their strength lies in what they represent, the marriage of progress and paranoia. The idea that even as Britain built modern transport for its citizens, it also quietly prepared for their potential destruction. They remind us that history does not exist only in grand gestures or dramatic battles, but also in hidden corridors, secret doors, and rooms no commuter was ever meant to see. The Victoria Line itself became a symbol of renewal when it opened in 1968. Fast, efficient, and technologically advanced, the first fully automatic tube line in London. Yet the bunkers beneath gave it another meaning: resilience in the face of annihilation. Today, with the Cold War long over but global tensions ever shifting, these hidden spaces feel at once obsolete and hauntingly relevant. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions about who is protected in times of crisis and who is left exposed. Heritage advocates argue that these bunkers deserve recognition, not just as military curiosities, but as pieces of social history, physical reminders of how ordinary people lived under the shadow of the bomb, and how governments quietly prepared for survival. They are part of London's invisible story, the layers of history that lie beneath the everyday hum of trains and commuters. In remembering them, we acknowledge that the Cold War was not only fought with missiles and diplomacy, but also with concrete, secrecy, and silent preparations buried beneath our feet. Today, the Victoria Line bunkers remain locked away, sealed behind thick doors and hidden in the fabric of London's busiest underground line. To the millions of passengers who travel on it each week, they are invisible, unknown, and unnecessary in an age where the Cold War has faded into history. Yet their silent presence is a reminder of a time when fear shaped the very bones of the city. They embody the paradox of the nuclear age, progress and paranoia built side by side, with sleek trains gliding past reinforced chambers designed for a world no one hoped would come. Their continued existence challenges us to think about the hidden layers of our cities, the spaces designed not for comfort or convenience but for survival. Unlike museums or memorials, these bunkers are not curated for visitors. They remain raw, utilitarian, and hauntingly authentic. They remind us that resilience often hides beneath the ordinary, woven into the infrastructure we take for granted. More broadly, they speak to the enduring truth that every era leaves its mark on the city, sometimes in visible monuments, and sometimes in secrets buried beneath concrete and steel. For London, the Victoria Line bunkers are part of a larger story of hidden resilience. From Second World War shelters to Cold War command posts, the city has always carried within it the shadow of conflict. In remembering them, We honor not only the engineers and planners who built them, but also the millions of ordinary people whose lives were shaped by the fear of annihilation. Though they were never used in anger, their existence served as a form of reassurance, grim perhaps, but necessary, that Britain had a plan for survival. As commuters hurry through stations like Oxford Circus or Euston, they pass unknowingly by these relics of another age, symbols of a city that has always endured by preparing for the worst. The Victoria Line dig was more than a transport project. It was a statement of resilience carved into the earth beneath London, a story of survival hidden in plain sight.